The roast chicken sat golden and perfect in the center of my dining table, steam still rising from its crispy skin. I'd spent the afternoon preparing it, the way I'd done every Sunday for 40 years, first for my late wife Margaret, then for Robert after she passed, and now for Robert and his wife Jessica whenever they deigned to visit. Which, lately, was becoming less and less frequent. "Mom, this looks amazing," Robert said, though his eyes were already on his phone, thumbs scrolling through what I assumed was work email. At 42, my son had become the kind of man who couldn't sit still, couldn't simply be present. Everything was about the next deal, the next client, the next rung up the corporate ladder. Jessica sat across from him, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the tablecloth I'd embroidered myself during one long winter after Margaret died. She barely glanced at the food I'd prepared. "Helen," she said, my name sharp in her mouth like a piece of broken glass, "we actually need to talk to you about something important." I felt my stomach tighten. Important conversations with Jessica never went well. She had a way of framing her demands as reasonable requests, her criticisms as helpful observations. In the 5 years since she'd married Robert, I'd watched my son transform from the sweet, thoughtful boy who used to bring me wildflowers into someone I barely recognized. "Of course, dear," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I passed the bowl of roasted vegetables. "But let's eat first. Everything's getting cold." "This really can't wait," Jessica insisted, pushing the bowl away without taking any. "It's about my father." I knew Gregory Thornton only in passing, a silver-haired man who'd made his fortune in real estate and seemed to measure everyone's worth by their bank balance. The few times we'd met at family gatherings, he'd looked through me as if I were part of the furniture. "Is he all right?" I asked, genuine concern coloring my words despite my complicated feelings about the man. "He needs a kidney transplant," Jessica said flatly, as if announcing the weather. "His numbers are deteriorating rapidly. The wait list is years long, and the doctors say he doesn't have that kind of time." "Oh my goodness," I breathed, setting down my fork. Whatever I thought of Gregory, no one deserved that. "I'm so sorry. That must be terrifying for your family." Jessica's eyes met mine then, cold and calculating. "We're all getting tested, me, Robert, my brother. But the more people we can add to the pool, the better his chances." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I felt Robert's eyes on me now, his phone finally abandoned on the table. "Mom," he said softly, using the gentle voice he'd once reserved for asking if he could have one more cookie before bed, "we were hoping you'd consider getting tested too." The request landed like a stone in my chest. I was 68 years old, in reasonably good health despite the arthritis in my hands and the blood pressure medication I took each morning. But donating a kidney? The surgery alone was serious, not to mention the recovery time and potential complications at my age. I don't know what to say," I stammered, buying time to process what they were asking. "Say yes," Jessica said simply. "Say you'll help save my father's life." "It's not that simple, Jessica. This is major surgery. There are risks." "Risks?" Jessica's laugh was sharp and humorless. "He's dying, Helen. Every day that passes, his kidney function drops a little more. But sure, let's talk about the risk of doing something good for once." "Jessica, that's not fair," I started, but Robert cut me off. "Mom, I know it's a big ask. But this is important. He's a good man. And he's Jessica's father. That makes him family." Family. The word echoed strangely. I'd been Robert's family since the day he was born, had held him through colic and nightmares, had worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for his college education after Margaret died and the life insurance barely covered the funeral. I'd been his family through every skinned knee, every broken heart, every triumph and failure. But somehow, Gregory Thornton, a man who'd never spoken more than 10 words to me, was now family too. More than that, apparently. Worth risking my health, my life even, to save. "I need time to think about this," I said quietly, my appetite completely gone. To talk to my own doctor, to understand what would be involved. What's there to think about? Jessica's voice rose sharply. Either you care about this family or you don't. Jessica, please, I tried to keep my tone calm, reasonable. This isn't about caring. This is about making an informed medical decision. You're old, Jessica said, and the bluntness of it stole my breath. I don't mean that cruelly, but it's just a fact. You've lived your life. You had your career, your marriage, you raised Robert. You're basically done. The room went completely silent. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Done? I repeated, the word barely a whisper. What she means, Robert interjected quickly, shooting his wife a warning glance, is that you're at a stage where you could really make a meaningful difference. Gregory still has years of productive life ahead of him. His grandchildren, your future grandchildren, deserve to know their grandfather. Future grandchildren? I looked at Robert, this detail catching me off guard. Jessica's hand moved to her stomach in a practiced gesture. We haven't told anyone yet, but yes. I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. So you see, Helen, this isn't just about saving my father. It's about giving our child a grandfather. I should have felt joy. I was going to be a grandmother. But all I could feel was the manipulation of the moment, the carefully choreographed revelation designed to increase the pressure. Congratulations, I managed. That's wonderful news. It would be more wonderful if we knew my father would be around to meet his grandchild, Jessica said pointedly. I looked at my son, really looked at him, searching for some sign of the boy I'd raised. The boy who'd cried when we had to put our old dog to sleep, who'd volunteered at the soup kitchen every Thanksgiving during high school, who'd once told me he wanted to be a doctor because he wanted to help people the way I had as a nurse. But that boy was gone. In his place sat a man whose jaw was clenched, whose eyes held something that looked uncomfortably close to contempt. You're being selfish, Mom, he said quietly. The accusation hit harder than if he'd shouted. Selfish. Me. The woman who'd given up her dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner to care for her dying husband. The woman who'd spent her retirement savings helping Robert through a rough patch with his startup 5 years ago. The woman who still did his laundry when he and Jessica didn't have time, who watched their dog when they traveled, who made Sunday dinners that grew cold while she waited for them to arrive. I'm not being selfish, I said, my voice shaking. I'm being cautious. This is serious surgery, with serious risks. And Gregory is seriously dying, Jessica interrupted. But I guess that doesn't matter to you. I guess blood really is thicker than water, or in this case, marriage certificates. That's not what I'm saying at all. Then what are you saying? Robert demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're saying Gregory's life isn't worth a few weeks of discomfort for you. A few weeks of discomfort? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Robert, this is organ donation we're talking about. The recovery alone is months, not weeks. And at my age, there could be complications. There could also be complications if you do nothing and let my father die, Jessica said coldly. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked down at my plate, at the chicken I'd so carefully prepared, the vegetables I'd selected at the farmer's market yesterday, choosing the freshest ones because I knew they were Robert's favorites. I need to think about this, I repeated, my voice barely audible. Please. Just give me some time. Time? Jessica stood abruptly, her chair scraping against my hardwood floor. That's the one thing my father doesn't have. But fine, Helen. You take your time. Weigh your options. Do whatever you need to do to live with yourself. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Robert stood too, and for a moment I thought, hoped, he might stay, might apologize for his wife's cruelty, might remember that I was his mother and I deserved at least basic respect. Instead, he looked at me with disappointment etched across his features. I thought you were better than this, he said softly. Mom, I really did. Then he followed Jessica out, leaving me alone with a table full of uneaten food and a heart that felt like it might crack in two. Part 2, Sleepless Nights. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the next. I lay in the bed I'd shared with Margaret for 35 years, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what had happened. The grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from Margaret's parents, ticked away the hours, each second a reminder that somewhere, Gregory Thornton's kidneys were failing a little more. But was that my responsibility? Was I truly selfish for not immediately offering up a vital organ? I thought about calling my sister Patricia, who lived in Arizona with her husband. But I could already hear her response, "Helen, you have to do what's right for you. That boy of yours has been taking advantage of your good nature for years." Patricia had never much cared for Robert, especially after he'd forgotten to invite her to his wedding because Jessica thought it should be intimate family only, which apparently included Jessica's sorority sisters but not my only sibling. Instead, I found myself pulling out old photo albums at 3 in the morning, tracing my finger over pictures of Robert at various ages. Robert at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a drawing he'd made me at school. Robert at 12, awkward and gangly in his Little League uniform. Robert at 22, graduating college, looking so proud and mature in his cap and gown. Where had it gone wrong? When had he stopped being my son and become this? Margaret would have known what to do. She'd always been the wise one, the one who could see 3 steps ahead in any situation. I'd been the heart of our family, she'd been the brain. What do I do? I whispered to her picture on my nightstand, the one taken on our 20th anniversary. She smiled back at me, forever 45, forever beautiful, forever silent. By Monday morning, I was exhausted and no closer to a decision. I called my doctor's office and scheduled an appointment, figuring that at least gathering information was a responsible first step. Dr. Patricia Chen had been my physician for 15 years, since shortly after Margaret died. She was efficient, thorough, and refreshingly direct, qualities I appreciated even when her honesty was uncomfortable. "Kidney donation," she said thoughtfully when I explained the situation during my appointment that Wednesday. "That's a significant undertaking, Helen. Tell me, is this someone you're close to?" "My daughter-in-law's father," I explained. "We've met a handful of times, but I wouldn't say we're close, no." Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "And you're considering this anyway?" "My son and his wife, they're very insistent. They think I should help." "I see." She was quiet for a moment, reviewing my chart on her computer. "Helen, I'm going to be frank with you. Even if you wanted to donate, I'm not certain you'd be approved as a candidate." My heart lurched. "What do you mean?" "Your blood pressure, for one thing. It's controlled with medication, but it's still a factor. You're also 68 years old. While that doesn't automatically disqualify you, it does increase the risk significantly. The surgery itself is major, we're talking general anesthesia for several hours, recovery time of at least 6 to 8 weeks for someone your age, potentially longer if there are complications." "What kind of complications?" "Infection, bleeding, blood clots, adverse reactions to anesthesia. There's also the long-term consideration, you'd be living with only one kidney for the rest of your life. If that remaining kidney develops problems, you'd be in a very vulnerable position." I felt relief and guilt war within me. Relief that I might have a medical excuse to say no. Guilt that I felt relieved. But if I were healthy enough, if I were a match, it would save his life, wouldn't it? Dr. Chen's expression softened. "Helen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you want to do this? Or do you feel obligated?" The question hung in the air between us. I thought about Jessica's cold stare, about Robert calling me selfish, about the grandchild I'd just learned about and how desperately I wanted to be part of that baby's life. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to help if I can. I want my son to see me as a good person. But I'm also scared." "Is that selfish of me?" "It's human of you," Dr. Chen said firmly. "Helen, listen to me carefully. Organ donation is an incredibly generous act, but it should never be coerced. The fact that you're feeling pressured concerns me greatly. Even if you were the perfect candidate, and I'm telling you right now that you're not, this decision should come from a place of genuine desire to help, not from fear of disappointing people. But if I don't at least get tested, they'll hate me. Then perhaps that's information you need to have, Dr. Chen said gently. Helen, in my 30 years of practice, I've learned something important. The people who truly love you will not ask you to risk your life to prove it. Her words echoed in my head as I left the office. She'd agreed to run the initial blood work, tissue typing, antibody screening, the first steps in determining if I was even compatible. But she'd been clear, even if I was a match, she had serious reservations about approving me as a donor. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was failing some crucial test. Part 3, the test. Robert called that evening. Not to check on me, not to apologize for Sunday's disaster, but to ask if I'd scheduled the testing yet. I saw Dr. Chen today, I told him, my voice carefully neutral. She's running the preliminary blood work. Good, he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Jessica will be glad to hear that. She's been really stressed about all this. She's been stressed. Not me. Not the person being asked to donate an organ. Robert, we need to talk about what happened at dinner, I said, gripping the phone tighter. Some of the things Jessica said. Mom, she was upset. Her dad is dying. You can't hold that against her. I'm not holding anything against her. But calling me done with life? That was cruel, Robert. Surely you can see that. Silence on the other end. Then, she didn't mean it the way it sounded. How else could she have meant it? Look, Mom, I don't want to get into this right now. Gregory's condition is getting worse. The doctors say he might need to start dialysis within the month if we can't find a donor soon. Can we please just focus on that? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him when he becomes so callous, so willing to sacrifice his own mother's well-being for his wife's family. But I was too tired, too heartsick. Fine, I said quietly. I'll let you know when the results come in. Thanks, Mom. I know this isn't easy, but you're doing the right thing. Dad would be proud. The invocation of Margaret felt like a twist of the knife. My late husband, who'd spent his final days telling me to take care of myself, to not spend my later years sacrificing for others the way I'd sacrificed for him and Robert. Don't do that, I said sharply. Don't pretend you know what your father would think. Mom. He told me to live my life, Robert. In the hospital, right before he died, he made me promise that I wouldn't spend my retirement taking care of everyone else. That I'd do something for myself for once. Well, he also taught me about helping family, Robert shot back. About doing the right thing even when it's hard. Or did you forget that part? No, I whispered. I didn't forget. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Margaret and I used to share on anniversary dinners, a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. I sat in Margaret's chair by the window, the one that looked out over the garden we'd planted together, and I cried. Not delicate tears, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone whose heart is breaking. Because somewhere in the last 5 years, I'd lost my son. Or maybe I'd lost him even earlier, and I'd just been too blind to see it. The test results came back 10 days later. I sat in Dr. Chen's office, my hands twisted in my lap, as she reviewed the papers in front of her. Helen, she said finally, her tone gentle but firm. You're not a match. Your blood type is compatible, but the tissue typing shows significant incompatibility. Even with immunosuppressants, the likelihood of rejection would be extremely high. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it left me dizzy. Not a match. I couldn't donate even if I wanted to. The decision had been taken out of my hands. But the relief was immediately followed by guilt. A man was dying, and I was glad I couldn't save him. There's more, Dr. Chen continued. The blood work also revealed that your kidney function itself has declined since your last physical. Not dramatically, but enough that I would never approve you as a donor even if you were a perfect match. Your creatinine levels are elevated, Helen. You need to be monitoring your own kidney health, not giving one away. I don't understand. I feel fine. That's often how it goes in the early stages of kidney disease. Many people don't have symptoms until it's quite advanced. We'll need to do more tests, adjust your blood pressure medication, possibly change your diet. But Helen, and I need you to hear this, you are not a viable donor candidate. Not just because of the compatibility issue, but because of your own health. This isn't me making a judgment call. This is medical fact. I nodded slowly, letting it sink in. Thank you, I managed. For being honest with me. Helen, I want you to take this paperwork home. Show it to your son and daughter-in-law. Make sure they understand that this wasn't your choice, this is your body telling you that donation isn't possible. And please, make an appointment with me for next month so we can follow up on those kidney numbers, alright? I left the office with a folder full of test results and medical explanations, feeling like a condemned prisoner who just received a last-minute pardon. But I knew, with a sick certainty, that Robert and Jessica wouldn't see it that way. Part 4, The Verdict. I called Robert that evening to tell him the results. Jessica answered his phone. Helen, she said coldly. I assume you're calling with good news? Is Robert there? I need to talk to both of you. He's right here. I'm putting you on speaker. Mom? Robert's voice came through tinny and distant. What did the doctor say? I took a deep breath. I'm not a match. The tissue typing showed significant incompatibility. But beyond that, Dr. Chen found that my own kidney function has declined. I'm in the early stages of kidney disease myself. I wouldn't be approved as a donor even if I were compatible. Silence. Then Jessica's voice, sharp as a blade, that's convenient. I'm sorry, what? I said that's convenient. Perfectly convenient, actually. You get to play the victim while my father dies. Jessica, I'm showing signs of kidney disease. This isn't. Did you even want to help? Jessica demanded. Or did you go into that appointment hoping they'd find something wrong so you'd have an excuse? The accusation was so outrageous, so cruel, that I couldn't even formulate a response. Jessica, that's not fair, I finally managed. I can show you the test results. Dr. Chen wrote out a full explanation. I'm sure she did. You probably had her exaggerate everything so you could back out. That's not what happened. Mom, Robert's voice cut through. Are you absolutely sure about this? Maybe we should get a second opinion. I felt as if I'd been punched. Robert, these are objective medical tests. My tissue markers don't match Gregory's. That's not something that changes with a second opinion. But your kidney function, maybe that's temporary. Maybe if you changed your diet, or maybe she just doesn't care if my father lives or dies, Jessica interjected. I care about a man's life, Jessica. But I also have to care about my own health. I'm sorry I can't help, truly I am, but this isn't something I chose. Isn't it though? Jessica's voice dripped with contempt. You chose not to want this. You chose to be relieved when the tests came back negative. Don't pretend you're disappointed, Helen. We can hear it in your voice, you're thrilled you found a way out. That's not, but wasn't it true? Hadn't I felt relieved? Even through the worry about my own health, hadn't there been a part of me that was glad? Mom, Robert said, and his voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest. If the tests had come back showing you were a perfect match and in perfect health, would you have done it? Would you have donated? The question hung in the air. I thought about lying, about telling him what he wanted to hear. But I was tired of pretending, tired of tiptoeing around my own son's contempt. I don't know, I admitted. I honestly don't know, Robert. It's a huge decision. That's all I needed to hear, he said, his voice flat. You wouldn't have. Even if you could have saved Gregory's life, you wouldn't have. Because you're selfish. Mom, I really am disappointed in you. Selfish? The word burst out of me with years of pent-up frustration. I worked 2 jobs to put you through college after your father died. I lent you $50,000 for your business, money I've never seen back. I've spent every Sunday for the past 5 years cooking dinners that you barely touch, watching your dog, doing your laundry. And there it is, Jessica said triumphantly. Keeping score. That's what selfish people do, Helen. They keep track of every little thing they do so they can throw it back in your face later. I'm not keeping score. I'm pointing out that calling me selfish is absurd when I've spent my entire adult life putting other people first. Other people, Robert repeated. But not Gregory. Not when it actually mattered. Not when it was more than just Sunday dinners and dog sitting. Something cracked inside me then. Some final thread that had been holding me together. You're right, I said quietly. I wouldn't have done it. Even if I were a perfect match, even if I were in perfect health, I don't think I would have donated a kidney to a man who's barely spoken to me. Because I have a right to say no. I have a right to make decisions about my own body, even if those decisions disappoint you. Then you're not the person I thought you were, Robert said. Maybe not, I agreed, tears streaming down my face. Or maybe you're not the person I raised you to be. That's really how you want to end this conversation? Jessica asked. By insulting your own son? No, I said softly. I don't want to end it like this at all. But I can't keep apologizing for not being willing to risk my life for your father. I'm sorry he's sick. I'm sorry I can't help. But I won't be made to feel guilty for a decision that was taken out of my hands by my own failing health. Your failing health, Jessica said mockingly. Right. Well, when my father dies, I hope you remember this conversation. I hope you remember that you could have at least tried to help, but you were too concerned with your own comfort. Jessica. But the line had already gone dead. I sat there in my empty house, clutching the phone, wondering how everything had gone so terribly wrong. Part 5, Silence. They didn't call for Thanksgiving. Or Christmas. Or New Year's. I sent texts that went unanswered. I left voicemails that were never returned. I even tried emailing Robert at his work address, thinking maybe Jessica was screening his personal phone. Nothing. I'd been cut off. Completely and utterly severed from my son's life. Patricia called every few days to check on me. He'll come around, she'd say, though her voice lacked conviction. Once the crisis passes, once Gregory is stable, Robert will realize he overreacted. But I wasn't so sure. Because it wasn't just about the kidney anymore. It was about something deeper, something that had probably been brewing for years. Robert had changed, or maybe I'd just finally seen him clearly. Either way, the son I'd raised seemed to be gone. I spent Christmas alone for the first time in my life. I'd always had Margaret, then Robert, then, in a pinch, Patricia and her family. But Patricia was in Arizona, and I couldn't face the thought of imposing on her during the holidays, of being the pitiful older sister who had nowhere else to go. Instead, I volunteered at the soup kitchen downtown, something I'd done on and off over the years. It felt good to be useful, to serve people who appreciated the food and the warmth without any expectation of sacrifice beyond what I was willing to give. It was there, on Christmas Eve, ladling out portions of turkey and stuffing, that I saw her. Natalie Thompson. I recognized her immediately, even though it had been 20 years since we'd worked together on the pediatric ward. She looked older, we all did, but her eyes still held that spark of mischief and kindness that had gotten us through so many difficult shifts. Helen Martinez? She said my maiden name, the one I'd gone back to after Margaret died because I'd wanted to carry a piece of my own history into my widowhood. Is that really you? We hugged, both of us laughing at the coincidence, and then spent the rest of the shift catching up. Natalie had retired 5 years ago and now spent her time volunteering and traveling, all the things I put off while I was working, she said. You look good, I told her honestly. Retirement suits you. It does, she agreed. But I have to say, Helen, you look tired. Is everything all right? And there, in the kitchen of a soup kitchen on Christmas Eve, I found myself telling her everything. The kidney request, the tests, the terrible phone call, the months of silence from my son. Natalie listened without interrupting, her face growing more troubled as the story went on. "My God, Helen," she said when I finished. "That's awful. I'm so sorry. I keep thinking maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe if I'd been more sympathetic, or if I'd agreed to get retested, or—" "Stop," Natalie said firmly, taking my hands. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. That woman, your daughter-in-law, she was completely out of line. And your son. Helen, I'm sorry, but he should have defended you. He loves his wife. I understand that." "Love doesn't require you to abandon your own mother," Natalie interrupted. "Love doesn't mean standing by while someone treats your family cruelly. Helen, has Robert always been like this?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I admitted. "Or maybe he has, and I just made excuses. He borrowed money and never paid it back, but I told myself he was struggling. He forgot to invite Patricia to his wedding, but I told myself it was a genuine mistake. He stopped visiting except when he needed something, but I told myself he was busy." "Oh, honey," Natalie said softly. "I think you've been seeing what you wanted to see." The truth of it hit me like a wave. She was right. I'd been making excuses for Robert for years, maybe decades. Telling myself that this was normal, that all adult children grew distant, that I was lucky to have him in my life at all. But was I? Was I really lucky to have a son who only called when he wanted something, who allowed his wife to insult me, who'd cut me off completely because I couldn't give him an organ? What do I do? I asked Natalie. How do I fix this? Maybe, she said gently, you don't. Maybe you accept that this is who Robert is, and you decide whether that's someone you want to keep sacrificing for. Her words stayed with me as I drove home that night. The streets were empty, Christmas lights twinkling in windows I passed. Behind those windows, families were gathered, hopefully kinder families than mine, I thought bitterly. When I got home, there was a message on my machine. My heart leapt, maybe Robert had called, maybe he'd had a change of heart. But it was Dr. Chen, checking in to remind me about my follow-up appointment in January and wishing me happy holidays. No word from my son. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, looking out at my garden, now dormant under a layer of frost. Margaret and I had planted those rose bushes together 30 years ago. We'd cultivated them through droughts and storms, pruned them back when they got unruly, fed them, cared for them. And they bloomed, year after year, because we'd tended them properly. But what about relationships that you tended and tended, only to have them wither anyway? Part 6, New Year, New Clarity. January arrived cold and bitter. I went to my follow-up appointment with Dr. Chen, where she confirmed that my kidney function was still declining, though slowly. We'll keep monitoring it, she said. But Helen, you need to start thinking about your own health now. No more putting everyone else first. It was advice I'd heard before but never quite taken to heart. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at my will. Margaret and I had drawn it up decades ago, revised it after she died. Most of my estate, the house, my savings, Margaret's life insurance payout that I'd invested carefully, was designated to go to Robert. I stared at that clause for a long time. Robert, who hadn't called in months. Robert, who'd called me selfish for not risking my life. Robert, who'd chosen his wife's contempt over his mother's dignity. Why was I leaving everything to him? The answer, I realized with startling clarity, was habit. Expectation. The unquestioned assumption that of course you leave everything to your children, regardless of how they treat you. But why? Why did children get a free pass on basic kindness? Why was I supposed to keep giving and giving, with nothing in return but silence and judgment? I thought about the soup kitchen, about the gratitude on people's faces when you handed them a warm meal. I thought about the hospital where I'd worked for 40 years, about the patients who'd sent me cards years after I'd retired, thanking me for the care I'd shown them. I thought about all the good that money could do in the hands of people who would appreciate it, who would use it to help others. And I thought about Robert, who'd never thanked me for the college tuition, who'd never paid back the $50,000, who'd cut me out of his life the moment I failed to meet his expectations. I made an appointment with my attorney for the following week. Helen, Gregory Hartley said when I explained what I wanted to do. He'd been handling my legal affairs for 15 years, had drawn up Margaret's will and then mine. Are you sure about this? This is a significant change. I'm certain, I said firmly. I want my estate divided between 5 charities, the Children's Hospital, the Soup Kitchen where I volunteer, the Kidney Foundation. I paused on that one, the irony not lost on me. The hospice where Margaret died, and the scholarship fund at the nursing school. And your son? Gregory asked carefully. Gets nothing, I said. Except a letter explaining why. Helen, I have to advise you that he could contest this. Let him try, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. I'm of sound mind. I'm making this decision freely and deliberately. Robert has made his choice about our relationship. This is mine. Gregory studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Let me draft the paperwork, and we'll schedule a signing for next week. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe years. That night, I started writing the letter I would include with the will. Not a letter of anger or recrimination, but one of honesty. I wanted Robert to understand, even if he never accepted it, why I'd made this choice. Dear Robert. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably angry. Possibly hurt. Definitely confused about why I chose to leave my estate to charity rather than to you. Let me explain. When you called me selfish for not donating a kidney to Gregory, something inside me broke. Not because of the request itself, I understand you were desperate, that you wanted to help your father-in-law. But because of what came after. You never asked how I was doing. You never acknowledged that I might have been scared. You never seemed to care that the tests revealed I have my own kidney problems to worry about. All that mattered was that I wouldn't, do what you wanted. And when I couldn't help, you cut me out of your life. No phone calls. No visits. Nothing. As if our entire relationship, every sacrifice I made, every late-night study session I helped you through, every college tuition payment, every dollar I lent you, as if all of that counted for nothing the moment I said no, This isn't about the kidney, Robert. This is about realizing that I've been enabling behavior that has been hurting both of us for years. By always saying yes, by always sacrificing, by always putting your needs above my own, I taught you that my well-being didn't matter. That I would always be there to give, regardless of how you treated me. I'm sorry I taught you that. It wasn't fair to either of us. The money I'm leaving to charity will do real good in the world. It will help children receive medical care, feed the hungry, support students who want to become nurses, provide comfort to the dying. It will make a positive difference. I hope it would have made a positive difference in your life too, but I no longer believe that's true. I think it would have simply been accepted without gratitude, the way everything else I've given you has been. I hope you find happiness, Robert. I hope you build a beautiful life with Jessica and your children. I hope you look back on your childhood with fondness, even if you can't seem to remember it with accuracy. But most of all, I hope you learn what I learned too late, that love without boundaries isn't love, it's just a different kind of cruelty. Love. Mom. I read it over 3 times, revised it twice, and finally sealed it in an envelope to be kept with my will. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted Margaret's picture. I told her, you'd be proud of me. Part 7, The Unexpected Call. February arrived, and with it, an unexpected phone call. I almost didn't answer, the number was unfamiliar, and I'd gotten wary of unknown callers. But something made me pick up. Helen Martinez? A woman's voice, tentative and uncertain. Yes? This is Claire. Claire Patterson. I was Gregory Thornton's nurse coordinator. For his transplant. My heart seized. Was? He found a donor, she said quickly. Anonymous. Someone from the registry who turned out to be a perfect match. He had the surgery 2 weeks ago and is recovering well. I sat down heavily. That's wonderful. I'm so glad. I'm calling because Gregory asked me to reach out to you. He wanted you to know that he's grateful you were willing to get tested, even though it didn't work out. And he wanted to apologize. Apologize? I was stunned. For what? He said that his daughter and son-in-law may have put undue pressure on you during an already stressful time. He's been on immunosuppressants since the surgery, and they've been making him reflective, I think. He's been going through his relationships, making amends where he feels he needs to. I didn't know what to say. I'd never expected this. He also said, Claire continued carefully, that you should probably know that Jessica has been telling people you refuse to get tested at all. That you wouldn't even consider helping. Gregory thought you should know what's being said. A cold fury settled over me. I see. I'm sorry to be the bearer of that news. I just thought, well, if someone was lying about me, I'd want to know. Thank you, I managed. Please tell Gregory I'm genuinely happy he found a donor and that he's recovering. After we hung up, I sat very still, processing this information. Jessica had been lying. Telling people I'd refused outright to help, rewriting history to paint me as the villain. And Robert? Had he known? Had he participated in this revised narrative, or had he simply not corrected it? I thought about calling him, about confronting him with this lie. But what would be the point? He'd made his choice. He'd chosen Jessica's version of events over the truth, chosen his wife's family over his own mother. I could either spend what time I had left fighting that, or I could accept it and move forward. I chose to move forward. Part 8, Spring. March brought warmer weather and, with it, a new resolve. I sold Margaret's wedding ring, the one I'd been saving for Robert's wife, though Jessica had never wanted it, preferring the massive diamond Gregory had helped Robert buy. The money went to the children's hospital in Margaret's name. I started painting again, something I'd given up years ago because Robert had needed the spare bedroom I'd been using as a studio for storage when he moved into his first apartment. I claimed that room back, filled it with canvases and paints and light. I reconnected with old nursing school friends through Facebook, women I'd lost touch with over the years because I'd been too busy being a mother and wife to maintain friendships. We started having monthly lunches, trading stories about our lives, our regrets, our hopes for the time we had left. And slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I thought about Robert less. When I did think about him, it hurt less. I was learning to grieve not for the son I'd lost, because I'd never really had that son in the first place, but for the fantasy I'd held on to for so long. In April, Patricia came to visit. She took one look at my studio, at the half-finished painting on the easel, at my face, probably more peaceful than it had been in years, and burst into tears. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. "Nothing's wrong," she sobbed. "Everything's right. Helen, you look happy. Actually happy. I can't remember the last time I saw you look like this." We spent the week together, talking and laughing and reminiscing about our childhood. She told me I should move to Arizona, be closer to her and her family. "Think about it," she said. "What's keeping you here? The house? Sell it. The memories? Bring them with you. You could have a whole new life, Helen. People who actually appreciate you." I promised to consider it. And I did. But in the end, I decided to stay. This was my home, where I'd built a life with Margaret, where I had my studio and my volunteer work and my friends. I wouldn't let Robert and Jessica drive me away from that. Besides, there was a strange power in staying. In living my life exactly as I chose, in the place I'd always lived, regardless of whether my son approved. Part 9, the message. In May, a message appeared in my inbox. From Robert. I stared at it for 10 minutes before I could bring myself to open it. Mom. I need to talk to you about something important. Can you call me? Robert. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of the months of silence. Just a request for me to call him. I should have deleted it. Should have maintained the boundary I'd so carefully constructed. But old habits die hard, and some part of me still hoped. What? That he'd changed? That he'd realized how badly he'd treated me? That he wanted to make amends? I called. Jessica answered. Of course she did. Helen, she said, her voice falsely bright. Hold on, let me get Robert. A moment later, Mom. Thanks for calling back. Your email said it was important, I said carefully. Yeah, so. Jessica's due in June. 6 weeks from now. Congratulations, I said, meaning it despite everything. A baby was always cause for joy, even in complicated circumstances. We wanted to let you know that we're hoping you'll be part of the baby's life. We think it's important for her to know her grandmother. Her. A granddaughter. My heart clenched. And what does being part of her life look like? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Well, babysitting sometimes. Birthday parties. Family dinners. The usual grandmother stuff. The usual grandmother stuff. As if the last 6 months hadn't happened. As if he could cut me out and then simply invite me back in when it was convenient, when he needed something. Robert, I said slowly, are you apologizing? Silence. Then, for what? For calling me selfish. For letting Jessica insult me. For cutting me out of your life for 6 months because I couldn't donate a kidney. Mom, that's ancient history. We're trying to move forward here. Ancient history? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Robert, you haven't spoken to me in half a year. You never apologized. You never even acknowledged that you might have overreacted. I wasn't the one who overreacted, he said, his voice hardening. You're the one who refused to help save a man's life. I was medically unable to help. There's a difference. If you say so. The dismissiveness in his tone made something snap inside me. Robert, let me be very clear. I would love to be part of my granddaughter's life. But not like this. Not as someone you call when you need free childcare and ignore the rest of the time. Not as someone who's expected to be grateful for crumbs of your attention. Jesus, Mom, are you still on this? Can't you just let it go? Can't you just apologize? For what? For being upset that you wouldn't save Jessica's father? For putting my wife's family first? For treating me like I'm disposable? For acting like love is conditional on whether I do what you want? For letting Jessica lie about me to people? Yes, Robert, I know she's been telling people I refuse to even get tested. She was upset. And that makes lying okay? Robert, do you even hear yourself? Look, he said, his voice taking on a tone I'd heard him use with difficult clients. I called to extend an olive branch. To include you in our lives. If you're going to be difficult about it. I'm not being difficult. I'm being honest. For once in my life, I'm being honest about what I need from this relationship. And what's that? Respect, I said simply. Basic human respect. An acknowledgement that I'm a person with my own needs and limitations, not just a resource for you to draw on when convenient. I've always respected you, Mom. No, Robert. You've always expected me to sacrifice. That's not the same thing. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel his frustration radiating through the phone. So what are you saying? You won't be part of your granddaughter's life? I'm saying I'll be part of it on terms that are healthy for both of us. Which means we need to have some honest conversations about the past 6 months, about the past 5 years, really. About how we got here and how we can do better. I don't have time for therapy sessions, Mom. I have a baby on the way, a business to run. Then I guess you don't have time for me either, I said quietly. You're really going to do this? You're really going to miss out on knowing your granddaughter because you can't let go of a grudge? It's not a grudge, Robert. It's a boundary. There's a difference. I don't see one. I know you don't. And that's the problem. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking. He didn't call back. Part 10, Summer. June arrived, hot and bright. Somewhere in the city, Jessica gave birth to my granddaughter. I knew because Patricia told me. She'd apparently still been on Robert's social media, though he'd blocked me months ago. Her name is Olivia, Patricia said gently. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She's beautiful, Helen. She has your eyes. I cried when she told me. Not the harsh, breaking sobs of grief, but the quiet tears of loss. Loss of what might have been, of the grandmother I'd wanted to be, of the relationship I'd hoped to have with my granddaughter. But I didn't reach out. Because I'd meant what I said to Robert. I wouldn't be part of Olivia's life on terms that required me to accept disrespect, to pretend the past didn't matter, to sacrifice my dignity for access to my own grandchild. If that made me selfish, so be it. I'd been called worse. Instead, I opened a savings account in Olivia's name. I set up an automatic transfer, $200 a month, every month, into an account she'd gain access to when she turned 25. By then, it would be enough for a down payment on a house, or to start a business, or to pay off student loans. And I wrote her a letter. Dear Olivia. We haven't met yet. We may never meet, that will be up to your father and whether he ever finds it in himself to make amends for the hurt he's caused. But I want you to know that you have a grandmother who loves you, even if she can't be part of your life right now. I want you to know that love should never require you to sacrifice your dignity or your health or your well-being. That real love supports you, challenges you to grow, but never demands you destroy yourself to prove it. I want you to know that saying no is not selfish. That boundaries are not cruelty. That protecting yourself is not the same as abandoning others. I want you to know that you deserve respect, always. From your partners, your friends, your family. Even, especially, from your parents. I hope your father learns these lessons and passes them on to you. I hope he grows into the kind of parent who sees his child as a whole person, not as an extension of himself. But if he doesn't, I hope you find these truths yourself. I hope you're stronger than your grandmother was, wiser than your father is, more willing to stand up for yourself than I was for most of my life. I hope you know that you are loved. Your grandmother. Helen. I sealed it with the account information and gave it to Gregory Hartley to hold with my will. She'll get this when she turns 25, he confirmed. Along with the money. And the letter I'm leaving for Robert, though I suspect he won't share it with her. You know, Gregory said thoughtfully, most grandparents would have capitulated by now. Would have accepted whatever terms were offered just to be part of the child's life. I know, I said. And maybe that makes me a terrible grandmother. But I keep thinking, what kind of example would I be setting? What would I be teaching Olivia about her own worth if I demonstrated that it was okay for people to treat me terribly as long as they gave me something I wanted in return? You'd be teaching her that love is transactional, Gregory said quietly. Exactly. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Helen, I think you're doing the right thing. It's hard. It's painful. But it's right. Part 11, Autumn. September brought cooler weather and an unexpected invitation. Natalie Thompson was getting married, finally, she'd laughed when she told me. At 70 years old, I'm finally doing it. And she wanted me at the wedding. Small ceremony, she said. Just close friends and family. You've become one of my closest friends this year, Helen. It wouldn't feel right without you there. I went, wearing a dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, something bright and beautiful that Margaret would have loved. The ceremony was in Natalie's garden, surrounded by flowers and friends, and it was one of the most joyful events I'd ever attended. Afterward, at the reception, I found myself talking to Natalie's daughter, Karen, who asked about my family. "My son and I aren't speaking at the moment," I said simply. It had gotten easier to say it without the weight of shame. "I'm sorry," Karen said. "That must be hard." "It is. But it's also necessary. He and his wife treated me poorly, and I'm not willing to accept that treatment just to maintain access to my granddaughter." Karen studied me for a moment. "You know, my mom told me about what happened. With the kidney and everything. And I have to say, I think you're incredibly brave." "Brave?" I laughed. "Most people would say I'm stubborn. Or selfish." "No," Karen said firmly. "Brave. It takes real courage to hold boundaries with your own children. Most parents, especially mothers, spend their whole lives being what everyone else needs them to be. You chose yourself. That's brave." Her words stayed with me long after the wedding ended. In October, Dr. Chen called with an update on my kidney function. It had stabilized, not improved, but not declined further either. The dietary changes and medication adjustments were working. "You're doing well, Helen," she said. "Better than I expected, honestly. Keep up whatever you're doing." I knew what I was doing. I was prioritizing my own health, my own happiness, my own life. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. And it turned out that when you did that, when you stopped pouring all your energy into people who didn't appreciate it, you had energy left over for things that actually brought you joy. My painting improved. I sold my first piece in November, nothing fancy, just a local art show, but someone paid actual money for something I'd created. The feeling was indescribable. I started taking a writing class at the community college. Started putting down on paper all the stories I'd collected over the years, from my nursing days, from my childhood, from my marriage to Margaret. I traveled, nothing extravagant, but weekend trips to neighboring states, visits to museums and gardens and places I'd always meant to see but never had because I'd been too busy taking care of everyone else. I lived. And slowly, painfully, I let go of the fantasy that Robert would change, would apologize, would become the son I'd always hoped he'd be. Part 12, The Reckoning. December brought the call I'd been half expecting and half dreading for months. "Mom?" Robert's voice on the phone, but different somehow. Smaller. Uncertain. "Robert," I said carefully. "Is everything all right?" "Yeah, everyone's fine. Olivia's great. His voice caught. "She's amazing, Mom. I wish you could see her." "I wish I could too," I said honestly. Silence stretched between us. "Then, can we talk? In person?" "I need to, there are things I need to say." We met at a coffee shop halfway between his house and mine. Neutral territory. He'd aged, I noticed when I saw him. The last 6 months had put lines around his eyes, gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. He looked tired. He looked, I realized, like a man who'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "Thank you for meeting me," he said once we'd both gotten coffee and settled at a corner table. "Of course. I don't know how to start this," he admitted, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "I've been trying to figure out what to say for weeks now." I waited, letting the silence do its work. "I was wrong," he said finally, the words tumbling out in a rush. "About the kidney thing. About how I treated you. About everything. Mom, I was so wrong, and I'm so sorry." I felt tears prick my eyes but blinked them back. "What changed?" I asked quietly. "Olivia," he said simply. "Being a father. Holding her in my arms and realizing that someday she's going to be an adult, and I'll be old, and I started thinking about what kind of relationship I want to have with her. And then I started thinking about the relationship I have with you, and I realized." He stopped, swallowing hard. "I realized I've been a terrible son. For years. Maybe always." "Not always," I said softly. You were a wonderful child, Robert. Sweet and kind and thoughtful. What happened to me? He asked, and there was genuine anguish in his voice. How did I become someone who would cut off his own mother for 6 months? Who would demand she risk her life and call her selfish when she couldn't? Who would let his wife treat her like garbage? You fell in love, I said. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that love shouldn't require you to hurt other people. Jessica and I. He hesitated. We've been in counseling. Marriage counseling. Things have been rocky since Olivia was born. And the counselor, Dr. Mitchell, she's been asking me questions about my family of origin, about patterns of behavior. And I started seeing things I didn't want to see. Like what? Like how I've always expected you to sacrifice for me. How I took your sacrifices for granted. How I never paid you back that $50,000, never even properly thanked you for it. How I borrowed your time and energy and money without ever thinking about what you might need. Robert. No, please, let me finish. I need to say this. He took a breath. The kidney thing. Mom, even if you had been able to donate, I had no right to expect it. No right to call you selfish for not wanting to undergo major surgery. Dr. Mitchell asked me if I would have donated a kidney to Gregory, and I said of course I would, and she asked why of course. And I realized. I probably wouldn't have. Not really. Not when it came down to it. But I expected you to, like it was just something you'd naturally do because you're my mother. Because mothers are supposed to sacrifice, I said quietly. Because I've always seen you as someone whose purpose was to take care of me, he corrected. I didn't see you as a person with your own needs and fears and limitations. I saw you as a resource. And God, Mom, that's so fucked up. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face in the middle of the coffee shop. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm so sorry, he sobbed. For all of it. For Jessica's cruelty, and yes, it was cruel, I can see that now. For my selfishness. For cutting you off. For missing these months with you. For letting you miss months with Olivia. Mom, I'm so sorry. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. Not because the hurt was gone, it wasn't. But because he was finally seeing it, finally acknowledging it, finally taking responsibility. I don't deserve that, he said. Probably not, I agreed. But forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to let go of anger so it doesn't poison you. Will you meet her? He asked. Olivia? Will you come have dinner with us? Just you, me, Jessica, and the baby? No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance to start over? I wanted to say yes immediately. Wanted to leap at the chance to hold my granddaughter, to be part of her life. But I'd learned something important over the past year. I need conditions, I said. He nodded. Whatever you need. First, Jessica apologizes. Not a half-hearted "I'm sorry you were offended," but a real, genuine apology for what she said and how she treated me. Done. She's ready to do that. She knows she was out of line. Second, we establish boundaries. Clear ones. About respect, about communication, about what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. And those boundaries get respected, even when it's inconvenient. Absolutely. And third. I hesitated. Third, you need to know that I've changed my will. Most of my estate is going to charity now. You'll get some things, personal items, family heirlooms, but not the money. That's going to causes that I believe in. I watched his face carefully, waiting to see if the old Robert would resurface, the one who'd expect the inheritance as his due. Instead, he nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair, actually. It's your money, Mom. You should do whatever you want with it. And honestly, after how I've treated you, I don't deserve a penny of it. It's not about deserving, I said. It's about me choosing how I want my resources used after I'm gone. I want to make a difference. To help people who need it. Like the people at the soup kitchen where you volunteer, he said. You know about that? I've been keeping tabs on you, he admitted. Through Patricia. Not in a creepy way, just. I needed to know you were okay. And she told me about the volunteering, about your painting, about the writing class. Mom, you sound happy. Happier than I've heard you in years. I am, I said. I've learned to live for myself. It's terrifying and wonderful all at once. We talked for another hour, hashing out details, making plans. It wouldn't be easy, rebuilding a relationship never was, especially one that had been damaged this badly. But for the first time in a year, I felt hopeful. As we were getting ready to leave, Robert hesitated. Mom? Can I ask you something? Of course. If things hadn't changed, if I hadn't reached out, if I'd just kept being the person I was, would you have been okay? Without me in your life? I considered the question carefully. Eventually, I said honestly. It would have hurt. It still hurts. But yes, I would have been okay. Because I've learned that I don't need someone else to make my life meaningful. I can do that myself. I don't want you to have to, he said softly. I want to be part of making your life meaningful. If you'll let me. I'll let you, I said. But on healthy terms. Deal? Deal. Epilogue, 1 year later. I'm sitting in my garden, the one Margaret and I planted together all those years ago, watching Olivia toddle through the flowers. She's 17 months old now, all chubby cheeks and curious eyes that are, indeed, exactly like mine. Robert and Jessica are inside making lunch. Things between us are good, not perfect, but good. Real. Honest. We have boundaries now, clearly defined ones that everyone respects. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, especially for Robert, who's still learning that no is a complete sentence. But we're working on it. Jessica apologized, truly apologized, for her behavior. We'll never be close, there's too much history, too much hurt, but we're cordial. Respectful. And she's a good mother to Olivia, which is what matters most. Dr. Chen says my kidney function remains stable. I'm careful about my diet, vigilant about my health in a way I never was when I was too busy taking care of everyone else. Gregory Thornton sends me a Christmas card every year now, thanking me again for being willing to get tested even though it didn't work out. We're not close, but there's a mutual respect there that didn't exist before. I still volunteer at the soup kitchen. Still paint. Still write. I've finished a memoir about my years as a nurse, nothing fancy, but it's honest and true and mine. Patricia visits twice a year now, staying in the guest room I finally cleared out of Robert's old storage. We're closer than we've been in decades. And my will remains unchanged. Most of my estate will go to charity, with personal items divided among people who will actually appreciate them. Robert knows this. He's accepted it. He says he wants to earn everything he has in life, not inherit it, a sentiment I never thought I'd hear from him. Olivia calls me Nana. She doesn't know the complicated history that preceded her birth, doesn't know how close she came to never knowing me at all. Maybe someday I'll tell her. Maybe someday she'll read the letter I wrote to her, though I hope by then it will be unnecessary because she'll have learned those lessons from her father. But for now, she's just a toddler discovering flowers and butterflies, and I'm just a grandmother who gets to watch her grow. It's not the ending I imagined when this all began. It's messier, more complicated, tinged with regret and hard-won wisdom. But it's real. It's honest. And it's mine. And that, I've learned, is enough. Nana. Olivia calls, holding up a dandelion she's picked. Flower. Beautiful flower, I tell her, pulling her into my lap. Just like you. She giggles and squirms, already off to her next discovery. I watch her go, this tiny person who exists because of choices and chances and the messy, complicated reality of family. Margaret's roses bloom behind us, resilient as ever. In a few months, they'll go dormant for winter, then bloom again in spring. The cycle continues. Just like us. Dormant, blooming, growing, changing. Always changing. And maybe, finally, growing in the right direction.